Welcome to Jazz Piano Skills. I'm Dr. Bob Lawrence. It's time to discover, learn, and play jazz piano. The last 2 weeks, we've gotten after it. 2 weeks ago, we explored the primary sounds of A major, A dominant, A minor, A half diminished, and A diminished. And our exploration was guided by 5 improvisational patterns to help us develop good fingerings needed to play with a proper jazz articulation. And last week, we followed the same approach, but dissected the altered A dominant sounds, the sharp 11, the flat 13, flat 9, flat 13, and the fully altered flat 9, sharp 9, flat 5, sharp 5. Wow. Now, typically I like to follow up these 2 weeks of serious grunt work with a bebop tune. But today I've decided to do a lecture series episode instead. Why? Well, because I just got back into town late last night from visiting my oldest son out in New Jersey, celebrating his 21st birthday with him. Man, do I feel old. So I didn't have time to put together a bebop tune episode, right? So much easier for me to do a lecture series episode today and push the bebop episode to next week. So last night on the plane ride home, I put together some thoughts about the development of a jazz piano practice approach. In other words, when you sit down to practice, what should you be practicing? As you all know, I get asked a ton of questions about jazz piano. But I can honestly say, I think the number one question by far is simply, what should I be practicing and how? Great question, right? Great question, straight to the point. And what I love about this question is that every jazz educator should be able to answer the question succinctly and with much conviction. And that is exactly what I'm going to do today. Yep, today I am going to present you with an outline of what you should be practicing and how. So today you get to kick back, you get to listen, enjoy my thoughts, insights, and experiences as a lifelong jazz student and professional jazz educator about the essential jazz piano skills that should be in your jazz piano practice approach. How fun is this going to be? So today, you're going to discover a jazz piano practice approach, and you're going to learn essential jazz piano skills found in a jazz piano practice approach. And you are going to play the essential jazz piano skills that should be in your jazz piano practice approach, both conceptually and physically. So as I always like to say, regardless of where you are in your jazz journey, a beginner, an intermediate player, an advanced player, or even if you are an experienced and seasoned professional, you're going to find this Jazz Piano Skills podcast lesson outlining a jazz piano practice approach to be very beneficial. But before we dig in, before we get going, I want to, as I always do, I want to welcome new listeners to the Jazz Piano Skills podcast. And if you are indeed new to Jazz Piano Skills, I want to personally invite you to become a Jazz Piano Skills member. There are various membership plans to choose from, so when you have a moment, visit jazzpianoskills.com to learn more about all of the perks that come along with each membership plan. There are educational weekly podcast packets, illustrations, lead sheets, play-alongs that are developed and produced for every weekly podcast episode. There's also an online sequential jazz piano curriculum, which is loaded with comprehensive courses, online weekly masterclasses, online interactive fakebook, and also there's a private jazz piano skills community that you can get involved with that hosts a variety of engaging forums. and there's unlimited, on top of all that, unlimited private, personal, and professional educational support. So all of these perks are waiting for you, wanting to help you discover, learn, and play jazz piano. So when you have a moment, visit jazzpianoskills.com, check it all out, and of course, become a member. If you have any questions, once you get there, please, by all means, do not hesitate to reach out to me, contact me. I'm always happy to spend some time with you, answer any questions that you may have, and help you in any way that I can. Okay, let's discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Let's discover, learn, and play an efficient and effective jazz piano practice approach. There's an old saying, an old expression that I absolutely love. People don't plan to fail. They simply fail to plan. And I can tell you this, without question, the number one reason why students experience little to no musical growth, even when they put in the time and effort at the piano, the reason being no progress is because they have no plan. It's that simple. Now, in defense of all students embarking upon the study of jazz, the reason no plan exists is that they are uncertain about the skills that need to be practiced, right? Hard to make a practice plan when you do not even know the skills that need to be practiced. Hence the creation of jazz piano skills. My goal is and has always been from the very beginning to introduce aspiring jazz pianists to the essential jazz piano skills that will help them truly achieve their musical goals and their musical dreams. I have spent a lot of time, effort, and energy over the past several years teaching essential jazz piano skills through this podcast, the weekly masterclass, and various educational resources that I make available through the Jazz Piano Skills website. So I thought it would be a good idea today to devote a little time to establishing a clear, concise, and thorough jazz piano practice approach that will help you organize the essential jazz piano skills in a way that will assure your success. In other words, let's put together a plan to succeed. So grab a pad of paper and a sharp pencil or two. You're going to want to take notes as I outline for you a jazz piano practice approach that you should begin implementing immediately. We begin with three broad categories. Number one, harmonic scales. Number two, melodic skills. And number three, rhythmic skills. Harmony, melody, and rhythm. I call them the Holy Trinity of music. Everything we discuss, everything we study, everything we practice should fall into one of these three categories: harmonic skills, melodic skills, rhythmic skills. If what you are practicing, you are unable to play squarely into one of these three categories, then you are either trying to practice something completely foreign to music, or you have a very skewed understanding of the skill that you are exploring. There are also three subcategories for each of the three main categories. So under harmonic skills, under melodic skills, and under rhythmic skills, I want you to create 3 headers. The headers are ascertain, process, and apply. Again, ascertain, process, and apply. You should list those 3 headers beneath harmonic scales, melodic scales, and rhythmic scales. So let me expound upon each of these subcategories. Subcategory number 1, ascertain. The gathering of legitimate information. So important. The gathering of legitimate information. In other words, what are the resources you are using to study this particular harmonic, melodic, or rhythmic skill? So very important. Like the saying goes, right? Garbage in, garbage out. You must absolutely be sure that the information you are hanging your hat on is solid and legitimate. Do your homework. Do your research. I know this is no shock to you, but all of the information you have at your fingertips is not good information. And this is very unfortunate because bad information leads you astray. And time is invaluable. Now, a quick litmus test that you can apply to any material that you are considering using as a jazz compass is to answer one very simple question. And the question is this: does the explanation and or presentation of this material appear to be difficult? If your answer is yes, then run away quickly. The resources you want to use should conceptually simplify the study of jazz piano and not complicate it. Let me say that again. The resources you want to use should conceptually simplify the study of jazz piano and not complicate it. Anything complicated is either bad information or is being poorly taught. Either way, it's a resource that you want to avoid. So the bottom line, make sure you have a body of resources that can legitimately help you ascertain quality jazz information. And of course, jazz piano skills resources should be at the top of your list. Okay. All right. So on to subcategory number 2, process. This is the act of studying the information you just ascertained. Did you catch that? Studying. Yes, like you're in school preparing for an important exam. Y'all have heard me say this 1,000 times, if not 1,000,000 times. Conceptual understanding drives physical development. In other words, if you do not have the skills sorted out upstairs conceptually, then you are fooling yourself into thinking that it's going to somehow magically come out downstairs in your hands on the piano. I like to call this process paper practice. Bottom line, music has to become easy for you mentally if you hope to have musical success physically. I'm going to say that again too. Music has to become easy mentally if you hope to have musical success physically. If music is hard, if music is confusing, if music is complicated, if music is abstract mentally, then you have no shot, absolutely no shot at successfully performing music. Okay, subcategory number 3, apply. Once you have a handle on musical data mentally, conceptually, you can move to the piano and sit on the bench with great confidence because you are now ready to begin your application. Success is just around the corner because you started with good resources to ascertain essential jazz piano skills. You then spent quality time conceptually processing the essential jazz piano skills, which now illuminate the path you need to take in order to successfully perform the essential jazz piano skills. See? A plan. A plan that does not try to ascertain, process, and apply essential jazz piano skills simultaneously, which is what 99.9% of everyone studying music tries to do. They try to ascertain, process, and apply information simultaneously, which is a formula for disaster. Just think about it. How difficult is that? Ascertain, process, and apply information simultaneously. Disastrous. Bottom line, to have success performing essential jazz piano skills, you have to begin with ascertaining quality information, quality material, and have spent adequate time studying the jazz piano skills, the information, the material. Stop trying to ascertain, process, and apply information simultaneously. It does not work. All right, so we have the basic outline of our jazz piano practice approach in place, right? We have our 3 main categories: harmony, melody, rhythm, right? We have the 3 subcategories for each one of those main categories, which is ascertain, process, and apply. So let's take a look at harmonic skills first. Beneath ascertain, this is within the harmonic skills category. Beneath ascertain, I want you to write chords. Chords. Okay? And underneath the chords, there are going to be 4 types. We're going to have blocks, traditional 3-note shells, contemporary 3-note chordal shells, and number 4, 2-handed voicings. Okay, those 4 again: blocks, number 2, traditional 3-note shells, number 3, contemporary 3-note chordal shells, and number 4, 2-handed 5-note voicings. Okay, now I have podcast episodes that deal with each one of those types of chords. Okay, the blocks, the traditional shells, contemporary shells, and 2-handed voicings that you can go listen to and dig deeper into each one of those. Now, look, under blocks, right? We have 12 notes, we have 5 sounds, we have 60 chords. You need to be able to play those block chords, root position, 3 inversions, right hand and left hand. Okay? Now, I want you to think of these 4 voicing types of chords: the blocks, traditional 3-note shells, contemporary 3-note shells, 2-handed 5-note voicings. I want you to kind of think of them in levels, right? Like level 1 would be your blocks. Level 2 would be your traditional 3-note shells. Level 3, contemporary 3-note chordal shells. Level 4, two-handed 5-note voicings. Now, if you are at level 1, fantastic. You have to have level 1 under your belt before you go to level 2, before you go to level 3, before you go to level 4. Now, the good news is this. If level 1, you go no further than level 1, no further than level 1 ever in your lifetime, that you can only play the blocks and you can only play them in root position and in their inverted shapes where they're inversions, right? Then I got great news for you. You can spend the rest of your life playing a lot of music. A lot of music. If you can play those blocks in your left hand and melody in your right hand of tunes, you are going to have a blast for the rest of your life. The only reason you want to go to level 2 and level 3 and level 4 is your playing will become or sound more mature. That's it. That is it, right? So if you are at the block level right now, congratulations. Level 1, fantastic. Now, this is the information that you should be, this is the information you want to ascertain, right? It's very clear, it's concise, it's not overwhelming. Now, the process subcategory, right? The paper practice regarding these 4 levels of blocks, traditional 3-note shells, contemporary 3-note chordal shells, and two-handed 5-note voicings. Now you're at the process level, the paper practice, again, that I like to call it. You should be able to spell these voicings, these chords. So if you're working on block voicings, you should be able to spell them in root position. You should be able to spell them in inverted shapes. Correct, right? You should be able to map them out, draw them, diagram them, right? Imagery is so important in the learning process, right? In the paper practice process, imagery. So this part of the learning process, so many times is skipped over. Right? We have our ascertain, process, and apply. So many times this middle section, processing or paper practice, is skipped over, and that is very, very unfortunate because, again, if it's not sorted out upstairs, I promise you're going to have difficulty getting it out downstairs in your hands. It's just not going to happen. The imagery, to touch upon that a little bit further, I used to use the imagery of the black and white notes on the piano quite a bit when I was learning my chords, right? So like a D flat major 7 would be a black, white shape. A D major 7 would be a white, black shape. C major is a white shape. You see what I mean? This kind of imagery. And I would map that out. I would draw that out. I would have keyboard diagrams where I would mark on the keyboard diagram so I can visually see that imagery. And I would write it out on paper, using WB for white, black. So again, the more of the imagery work that you can do, the more of the paper practice you can do, the more secure these voicings are going to be. Do the same thing for your 3-note shells, the same thing for your 3-note chordal voicings, and the same thing for your two-handed 5-note voicings, right? Be able to spell them and be able to map them out on paper before you go to the piano. Okay, so now let's get to the piano. Now we apply, right? We apply the chords. So now we're at the actual practicing of the chords. And I will suggest 4 ways in which to practice your chords, whether you're using blocks, traditional 3-note shells, contemporary 3-note chordal shells, or two-handed 5-note voicings. I like to practice them by what I call family. I like to practice them by type. I like to practice them by key. And I like to practice them by progression. So if I'm going to practice my chords, I'll demonstrate on using blocks, level 1. So if I'm going to practice my blocks by family, I'm going to play something like C major, C dominant, C minor, C half diminished, and C diminished. All right, so my 5 C chords: C major, C dominant, C minor, C half diminished, C diminished. And then I would practice them in their inverted shapes as well. So I just played them in a root position, but I would put them in first inversion and do the same thing. C major, C dominant, C minor, C half diminished, C diminished. All right? And then I would do the same thing in second inversion, same thing in third inversion. Now, for type, I would group all of my, say, major chords together. So I might move in chromatic motion, like C major to D flat major to D major to E flat major to E major, and so on. F major, right? Moving in chromatic motion. I would do those in inverted positions. Again, C major, first inversion, D flat major, first inversion, D major, E flat, E major, first inversion, F major, first inversion, and so on. Okay, so when I reference type, I'm saying put all your major chords together, put all your dominant chords together, minor, half diminished, and diminished. Okay, group them and then use various patterns. Whether you move chromatically, you can move around the circle of fifths, C major, F major, B flat major, E flat major, A flat major, and so on. Okay, so you can use various patterns to practice moving your chord types around on the piano. Third way I like to practice my voicings, my chords, after I've ascertained them, after I've done my paper practice and processed them, I like to practice them by key. So if I'm in the key of C, I'm playing C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G dominant, A minor, B half diminished. Okay? So there's the 7 chords in the key of C. And I would practice those in the inverted shapes as well. So I'm going C major in first inversion, D minor first inversion, E minor first inversion, F major first inversion, and so on. Okay? And again, I'm doing these in both hands right now, but I would practice them hands separately and then hands together. And I would then move to various keys. I could go up a half step, go to D flat major. Now I'm in the key of D flat, E flat minor, F minor, G flat major. Or maybe I move around the circle of fifths. Again, I just want to think within a key, and I can move those keys around using various patterns. Finally, I like to practice my chords, my voicings, whether they're the blocks or traditional shells, 3 chordal shells or the 2-handed voicings. I like to use progressions. And of course, the most common progression of all is our 2-5-1 progression. So I'll go to the key of C, 2, 5, 1. Go to the key of F, 2, 5, 1. Or G minor to C7 to F major. And again, right, I'd practice using those starting with that 2 chord in various positions. So instead of playing just 2-5-1 with my 2 chord being in root position, I'd put my 2 chord in first inversion, put my 2 chord in second inversion, and my 2 chord in third inversion. So in other words, it creates a domino effect. However I start my 2 chord determines how my 5 chord is going to be played, determines how my 1 chord is going to be played. So that's a very quick run through of the harmonic skills that I would have in my jazz piano practice approach. I'd be tackling my chords based on blocks, traditional 3-note shells, contemporary 3-note chordal shells, and 2-handed 5-note voicings. I would spend time processing these chords or doing the paper practice, spelling them in root position, inverted shapes. I'd be mapping them out on keyboard diagrams or mapping them based on imagery, black note, white note, black note, so and so on, okay? And then I would apply them, these chords, by family, by type, by key, by progression. And again, I would use root position and inverted shapes, or I would use the various options for my shell voicings and my two-handed voicings. Again, I have podcast episodes out there already on all of these voicing types and more information with regards to this outline and how to practice them. All right, so now on to category 2, melodic skills. And for the melodic skills, we have our same 3 subcategories, right? Ascertain, process, and apply. Under or beneath ascertain, write scales and arpeggios. These would be your major scales, harmonic minor scales, and melodic minor scales. Okay? Again, major scales, harmonic minor scales, melodic minor scales. Now, I know there are other scales, right? But again, these 3, the major, the harmonic minor, and melodic minor. Personally, I feel if you don't have a command of these 3 scale types, then you shouldn't be looking at other scales to explore. Make these your top priority. Major, harmonic minor, melodic minor scales. Study them. Now, the paper practice, right? The process. Paper practice. Spell them just like you would spell your chords. I would spell them from the root to the 7th. The root to the 7th. Okay? And I would also spell them from various entry points, not just from the root. I would spell them from the 3rd, I would spell them from the 5th, and I would spell them from the 7th. I would map them out again on a keyboard diagram, right? You can print a keyboard diagram from the internet, print it out, use it as a template to X out your scales. I would also encourage you to diagram them using drawing them, right? And what I mean by drawing them, and this is kind of hard to explain verbally, but I used to use a line. I used to draw a line on a piece of paper. So like, for instance, a C major scale would be just a straight line, right? Because there are no flats or no sharps in a C major scale. So it would be just a straight line. If I were mapping out a D flat major, the line would start straight, and then there would be a dip down because it goes to the note F. I'd come right back up with my line again, kind of like a V shape. It would come back up to the note G flat, straight over to another straight line over to B flat, then straight down to C, and then back up to D flat. So I have kind of like a V shape at the end as well. Okay, so you would see once I would draw that imagery on a piece of paper using a line, it was amazing because I would go to the piano and I'd play that scale and it would literally mirror the line. So it's kind of hard to explain verbally. I wish I could draw it for you right now, but hopefully if you try a couple of those, it will come to life for you. And of course, if you have any questions, please let me know. The point being is the more time you can spend with scales, with arpeggios, spelling them, drawing them, mapping them on a keyboard diagram, the better. Okay, the better. Now, application. Number 3, application. So we talked about ascertain underneath in my category of melodic skills for practicing in my jazz piano practice approach. Under ascertain would be my scales and my arpeggios. My scales would be major, harmonic minor, and melodic minor. We talked about how to process the scales and arpeggio. Again, paper practice, spelling them, mapping them out, diagramming them. Number 3, applying scales and arpeggios. Right now we're at the piano. And for all of you who have been following jazz piano scales for a while, you know exactly what I'm going to talk about. Entry point fragments where I practice my scales, I practice my arpeggios from the root to the 7th, from the 3rd to the 9th, from the 5th to the 11th, from the 7th to the 13th. The whole point is to become root independent, that I can play these scales, I can play my arpeggios from various entry points from within the sound. Okay, again, root to 7th, 3rd to 9th, 5th to the 11th, and to the 11th to the 13th. So my scale, for instance, if I did a C minor scale, root to 7th. If I did 3rd, 3rd to 9, 5th to the 11th, 7th to the 13th. If I did arpeggio, same way, right? Root to 7th, 3rd to 9, 5 to 11, and 7 to 13. Okay? And then, of course, I would practice the arpeggio of the scale in its entirety as well, right? So going all the way to the 13th. Same with the scale, right? All the way to the 13th. There you go, and then back. So everything I would practice, of course, would be ascending, descending motion. But with my scales, with my arpeggios, I would absolutely break them apart and get used to hearing them from various entry points, root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th, and make sure that you are exploring the entire sound. Okay? With regards to the harmonic minor and melodic minor scales, I would practice them in relationship to the major scale. And what I mean by that is I used to practice like C major scale. Then I'd practice my C melodic minor scale, which is just simply lowering the 3rd. And then I would practice my harmonic minor scale, which is a lowered 3rd and a lowered 6th. So I'd have a nice little set there. Major, melodic minor, harmonic minor. Okay? Knowing full well that my harmonic minor and melodic minor scales are going to be used to explain altered sounds. But for now, if you're not at that point, just practice your major harmonic and melodic minor scales just as I demonstrated, knowing full well that you are getting under your fingers the shapes and sounds that you're going to need to understand altered sounds. Okay? Okay, so for our final category today, rhythmic skills, that is going to be part of our jazz piano practice approach, rhythmic skills. We have our same 3 subcategories, right? We have our ascertain, we have our process, and we have our apply. Okay? So under ascertain, I would place a strong emphasis on the study of and the discovery of rhythmic patterns. And again, I have podcasts. In fact, all last year was devoted to rhythmic development and rhythmic patterns. So any of the podcasts from last year you will find to be extremely beneficial. But I would focus heavily on ascertaining various rhythmic patterns using whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, and eighth note values. And then, of course, syncopated values as well, like dotted quarter eighth and the dotted eighth 16th pattern. Also, eighth note triplets and quarter note triplets. Again, all last year was devoted to these rhythmic patterns and rhythmic motifs that you need to have in your practice, jazz piano practice approach. If rhythmic practice is new to you, then I would stick to 4/4 time right now. If you are comfortable with 4/4 time, the next logical step would be practicing patterns in 3/4 time. Okay? But 4/4 time is where you should begin and where you should stay until you feel that you are developing a strong sense of time and a strong sense of rhythmic values. Subcategory 2, process, right? Paper practice. Wow, this is so important when it comes to rhythm. Because if you can write rhythms, if you can write various rhythms using whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, and even the syncopated values, right? The dotted quarter, eighth, dotted eighth, 16th. If you can write it, wow, it is going to become so much easier for you to play it because you actually conceptually understand it, right? You're not guessing, in other words, at rhythms. So again, writing them, mapping them, diagramming them, anything that you can do to help digest these rhythms conceptually is time well spent and absolutely invaluable. There are apps out there that will help you, that will give you rhythmic dictation, if you will, where it will play a rhythm and then you have to identify that rhythm, either write it out or be able to identify it on the screen. Again, great tools, great resources to use. So if you just did a search, you would find many of these software applications and sites that can help you with rhythmic notation, rhythmic understanding. Okay. Now, applying the final subcategory or subset here, the application or applying rhythm. The best, I think the best, but I'm old school. The best is what I call tap and clap, right? So you can take your hand, tap a rhythm on the table. You can take your hands and clap that rhythm. If you can tap it and clap it, you will be able to play it, right? Tap and clap. So I would practice first rhythmically using my hands like a percussionist, very percussive. Then I would practice rhythms using isolated sounds. So I might play a rhythmic idea. Let's say I had 3 quarter notes followed by 2 eighth notes. I might play those using, say, a minor chord, simple voicing, maybe something like just like that, right? So I got 3 quarter notes, and then followed by 2 eighth notes. So taking any rhythm, taking a single voicing, whether it's a block voicing, a two-handed voicing, a chordal voicing, a chordal shell, or a 3-note traditional shell, it really makes no difference. You use that voicing to practice the rhythm that you're wanting to play. Okay, so isolated sound. Then, once you're comfortable with isolated sound, I would move it to a progression, right? So I might take a 2-5-1. If I take that same rhythm, 3 quarter notes followed by 2 eighth notes, apply a 2-5-1, might end up with something like this. One more time. Right? So you can take any progression. It doesn't have to be 2-5-1. If you want to do 3-6-2-5-1 or 1-6-2-5-1 or 2-flat-2-1, again, you can mix it up however you want to keep interest. But I would then apply that rhythm over that progression. Now, again, all last year, 2022, heavy dose of rhythmic study that you can tap into throughout the entire year to help you with this development. Wow, so much to try to get through within 1 hour, right? As I always say, it's a ton of information in a very short and very fast hour. But the idea here was to give you a fundamental, a basic jazz piano skills, jazz piano practice approach, right? That is organized using harmony, melody, and rhythm as the main categories, with the essential jazz piano skills of each of those categories being studied using the subcategories of ascertain, process, and apply. Now, I just simply cannot stress the importance of approaching the study of jazz using a logical, structured, and organized blueprint that allows you to manage a formulaic approach to developing the skills needed to play tunes. Oh yeah, tunes. Oh, let's talk about tunes for a second. Did you notice that the playing of tunes, it was not included in my jazz piano practice approach? I know, right? Blasphemy. Well, here is why tune playing was not included. You do not develop your jazz piano skills by playing tunes. I'm going to say this again. You do not develop your jazz piano skills by playing tunes. Tunes are the cherries on top of the cake, right? Your success in playing tunes is 100% dependent upon your familiarity, your comfort, and your mastery of essential harmonic, melodic, and rhythmic skills, right, that you have properly ascertained, processed, and applied. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that skill practice results in tune performance, not the other way around. Now, I am not saying do not make time to play some tunes. Right? I love ending a great practice session with playing a tune. It's like my reward for putting in the grunt work necessary to get better. I do not, however, kid myself into thinking that somehow by playing tunes, the essential jazz piano skills that I need to develop are somehow improved. Think about it. How in the world can I develop the skills that I cannot play by playing a tune? I want to say that again because it's so important. How in the world can I develop the skills that I cannot play by playing a tune? It's impossible. My hands cannot play what they cannot play. Right? My hands cannot play what they cannot play just because it's a tune. So I'm going to have to set the tune aside and practice the skills that I need to be able to play in order to play the tunes. Wow. So look, lock in on the jazz piano practice approach that I presented today, and you'll be playing all the tunes that you want to play with great success. I promise you. Continue to make tune playing, on the other hand, continue to make tune playing the center of your practicing, and you will sound the same a year from now. You will sound the same 5 years from now. You will sound the same 10 years from now, and so on. I'm just giving you a little tough love there, right? And most importantly, I say this every podcast, right? Be patient, right? Developing mature and professional jazz piano skills takes time, right? It takes a lifetime. So let's just do a quick recap, okay? Your jazz piano practice approach should have 3 broad categories. Those categories are harmony or harmonic, melody, melodic development, and rhythmic development, right? Harmonic, melodic, rhythmic. Within each one of those 3 categories, we have 3 subcategories: ascertain, process, apply. Ascertain is where you do your homework. You make sure that you have good resources, good materials that you are using that introduce you to essential jazz piano skills. Process is your ability and determination and dedication to implementing paper practice with regards to these essential jazz piano skills. Spending time working them out conceptually so that the concepts, the skills themselves are easy conceptually, so that you have a shot at actually being able to play them or perform them. And number 3, the application. And this is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, right? This is where you're actually going to play the jazz piano skills that you've ascertained, the jazz piano skills that you've taken the time to process, and now you're ready to apply them, okay? So I took some time to put some good information in each one of those categories for you. Again, I have done podcast episodes on all those jazz piano skills throughout the last several years that you can look up at the Jazz Piano Skills website and check out. And again, if you have questions, as always, let me know. Okay, well, I hope you have found this podcast episode, this podcast lesson exploring a jazz piano practice approach to be insightful and, of course, to be beneficial. And don't forget, if you are a Jazz Piano Skills Ensemble member, I will see you online Thursday evening at the Jazz Piano Skills Masterclass. It's going to be 8 p.m. Central Time to discuss this podcast episode lesson, exploring a jazz piano practice approach in greater detail, and to answer any questions that you may have about the study of jazz in general. As always, you can reach me by phone, 972-380-8050. My extension here at the Dallas School of Music is 211. If you prefer email, my email address, Dr. Lawrence, drlawrence at jazzpianoskills.com, or you can use the SpeakPipe widget, which is a nifty little device that is found, I think, on literally every page of the Jazz Piano Skills website, that you can send me a message that way. Well, there is my cue. That's it for now. And until next week, enjoy exploring your new jazz piano practice approach. And most of all, have fun as you discover, learn, and play jazz piano.